Welcome to episode 2 of the build breakdown for this Mustang. That might be what we call it, build breakdown. We'll see about that. First episode was why we're building it. Second episode is kind of the first couple parts that we started on and why we chose them. So you saw us cut the car apart. That was needed. Wreck damage, cool, everybody does that. You gotta rebuild the wreck damage. The first two pieces that we decided on, aside from knowing that we were gonna take some GTR parts, was the K-member and the control arms. Lower control arms to be specific. We wanted to use as many Mustang parts as possible to make this very simple. We didn't want to swap in a whole new subframe with GTR parts, and now we have a whole front clip from a GTR. Now the reason we chose the specific parts that we did from these specific brands, K-member, it has this extra brace back here. It had some extra bracing around here. The front right here is not tubular, it's squared, which I don't think necessarily makes it stronger, but it just looked like a beefier K-member than some of the other companies had. And also it was a really great price. Some of the other ones were twice the price of this and didn't look like they had as much strength. And I knew we were gonna be beating on this car a lot, so I wanted to do that. And we knew we were gonna have to cut some of it out, so I wanted as much bracing as possible to help make up for the stuff that we were gonna cut out. Even though we're putting some of it back and gonna have to weld in support, we just wanted a good foundation in case we didn't quite get the geometry right and what we put back is a little bit weaker. We wanted just a good foundation for that stuff. Now for the control arm choice, we went with these, I think they're from a company called Synergy. They're drift control arms, so they have this big cutout on the back for you to have a lot of steering angle. Now the reason we went with those was we knew we were gonna be wanting to do some drifting with this. It's an all-wheel drive Mustang, right? That's the unicorn is kind of what you do. We knew we didn't want a track build. We knew we either wanted to go straight or sideways. All-wheel drive seemed like the obvious choice for that because you can kind of do both. And so with regular control arms, you can't get quite as much steering angle, which with the all-wheel drive, that probably doesn't matter anyways, but we wanted to give it the best chance possible. Also, because of the GTR knuckles, which will probably be shown in a later video, it has these Heim joints on the end. Now, normally for the Mustang knuckles, which I've mentioned before in a previous video, you have to have an adapter because normally the ball joint goes up from the control arm and then the knuckle sits on top of it. For the GTR knuckles, they have it the other way. The ball joint sits on the knuckle and it goes down. These were an obvious choice because with the ball joint automatically going down on the GTR knuckle, a little something like that, it meant it was gonna be an easier swap for the GTR knuckles to just fit on these control arms. We knew we were gonna have to modify them in some way, which is why we made those little 3D printed pieces, which again, you will see when we do an episode on the knuckles and all the GTR parts. But again, the idea was to not re-engineer as much as possible. We knew we were gonna have a ton of work with this thing. We wanted to simplify it and get parts that at least somewhat sort of fit together. So for the upper control arm, this is not a Mustang part, but some people have used these upper control arms for their Mustangs, Fox bodies, SN95s to make an SLA setup. An SLA setup is a short, long arm setup. And basically what it does is it creates a upper and lower control arm and gives you better control of your suspension as it compresses. Now there are a ton of advantages in the road race autocross world. For us, the reason we did it was just to have a way to attach the knuckle, adapting, a strut, the normal Mustang strut, which looks like this on the bottom where it would attach to the knuckle. That would be insanely hard to try to adapt to this in some way. We'd have to make some crazy bracket and it wouldn't line up, and we'd have to get a shorter one because where it attaches is a lot higher than where the Mustang one attaches on the Mustang knuckles. So the easiest thing for us was just to adapt an upper control arm. Now the upper control arm fits amazing with the bracket that we have and the spherical bearing and all the adapters we have in there. It's working out a lot better than we thought it was going to. So this upper control arm, we have a spacer that's inside here that basically turns it from a taper hole to a straight hole so that this bolt can go all the way through and not wobble around. There's another one of these off-center spacers on the bottom. Then we have the spherical bearing, the spacer, and obviously the bolt that goes through. I've mentioned this a lot in one of the other episodes we posted where we fully assembled this and made the bracket for the control arm. The reason we went with the spherical bearing is just to account, it's the same thing with the bottom, to account for the movement when it goes up and down. You have to have some articulation there on the end of the control arm. Now the problem that we have come to run into with this control arm, which there will definitely be more episodes on, very specific episodes because it is a very particular problem, is the hole that you would normally press in a ball joint to is 46 millimeters in diameter. The spherical bearing I ordered is 46 millimeters in diameter, and they fit so perfectly together that the spherical bearing slides in and out of it perfectly. It might actually even be a little bit smaller than the hole. The hole might have a tolerance of like 46.07, like I don't know what it is. There's some tolerance in there where the bearing just slips all the way through it. Now most people would say, oh, just weld it in. Two problems with that. It will destroy the bearing. The inside is a PTFE liner, and if you get those too hot, they just disintegrate. Second problem is I'd like them to be serviceable. I don't know how beat up this car is gonna get, and I would like to, if they get messed up, press them out and press a new one in. So welding is out of the question, and now we're working with a tolerance of some fraction of a millimeter to try to make a spacer or a sleeve to then press it all together. That's why instead of a 46 millimeter bearing, we have a 42, look at the same size. That's a 42 millimeter bearing. That gives us 2 millimeters of thickness to make a sleeve, which is way better than some fraction of a millimeter. Now, we've also run into more problems with the 42. The problem that comes with the 42 is now these offset spacers don't fit inside. Now, these are just a kit that I bought that come with the lower control arms to adapt the normal knuckles. They're actually supposed to go on the bottom of the adapter for the Mustang knuckles. We have used these to also use on the bottom of the GTR knuckles and on the top for the upper control arm. They come with these little spacers to give you as much articulation on the bearing as possible. So they go inside the bearing, and then when you rotate, they can actually tuck inside the bearing a little bit and give you a little bit more articulation. Just a few more degrees of angle in case you need it. Now, this isn't the biggest deal that they don't fit, because you can order different sizes of these, which we might have to. The problem is finding, again, one that can fit in here and then one that can accept our bolt, because it's a very large size bolt. So the other option is to maybe, whenever we get the CNC in, to shave part of this down and then shave part of this down. You don't want to make this too thin, you don't want to make this too thin. So take a little bit off of each, hopefully they'll slip in, and then we will still have the inner diameter proper for the bolt. I think that's all the information about the K-member and the control arms that I have right now. The upper control arm is still a work in progress. There will be more and more videos coming out about that. It's gonna be a process getting that to fit. And we actually have to remake those brackets because the control arm has to be spaced a little bit farther forward. So all that work we did was very good work. It helped us see a lot of things, but we do have to remake that. Other than that, I think that's it for this episode. If there's something I left out that you guys want to see specific about these K-members and control arms, definitely let me know. Other than that, I think next we're going to be doing GTR, the knuckles and all the GTR parts, so definitely look out for that video.